Hey, this is Drew with Make It Better, and today we're going to look at how you can brew your very own kombucha at home. Check it out. So you are here because you want to learn how to make kombucha on your very own at home. And in order to do that, you're going to need to pick up a few essential supplies to make the process nice and smooth. I'm going to tell you exactly what you need, how to do this, and you're going to be set to go on the big brewing day. For our purposes today, we're going to be making 6 liters of kombucha, which is more than enough for most people to last you for a couple weeks at least. The first thing that you're going to need is a Scoby, a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, also known as a mother by some people. Please don't call it a mother. Next, you're going to need some white sugar. Just regular old table sugar is going to be totally fine. You can use some other sweeteners, but not honey. Honey is a no-no at this stage. Next, you're going to need some black tea. Does not have to be fancy at all. This is mainly used as a medium for the Scoby to grow and thrive in. So just get some black tea. You're going to be ready to go. Next, you're going to need a primary fermentation vessel. Something glass would be ideal, or a food grade plastic would also work. This one has a spout which makes the bottling process much easier. We'll be using 2 at this size. Next, you're going to need something to put them in for the finished fermentation, the bottling stage. I use actual brewing bottles. You don't need to use these. You can use screw top bottles, or soda stream bottles work great. You can even reuse old soda bottles, things like that. But this is a worthwhile investment. I think easy to clean and reuse. Next, you're going to use something to measure. Measuring cup and tablespoon would be ideal. You probably have something like that at home. When you get to the bottling stage, you can experiment with different flavors. If you have food-grade essential oils, these are from Young Living. These work great if you want to add a little bit of zazz to your kombucha and try some different stuff. Next, you're going to need a stock pot large enough to hold the contents of your kombucha container. Once you have everything in place, put it somewhere where you have easy access, and you're going to be ready to go on the big brew day. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Come on. Now what we're going to do is take one of our containers of water. Like I said, we're going to be doing 2 of those jars worth of kombucha. What I'm going to do is fill that up completely with water. Just regular old tap water is totally fine. I'm going to bring it over, and I'm only going to be bringing about 25% of my total volume of water to a boil to make my sweet tea concentrate. So you can see we got 1 container full of water. Overall, this is going to make 6 liters. Each of these is 3 liters. So we're going to pour half of this container into the stock pot. And the reason why we do such a small amount of water is it allows us to use the rest of the water to bring it down to a rapid cool. And that will allow you to put your kombucha Scoby in the water more quickly. If the water is hot, if it's too hot, it's going to damage your Scoby. So we are only pouring half of our container of liquid into the stock pot. We're going to put it on heat, bring it to the boil in just a moment, just showing you, even if you're off by a little bit, it doesn't really matter. Just the main thing is don't pour all your water that you're going to use into making the tea concentrate, or it's going to take forever for your liquid to cool down, and it's going to slow down the process. So just make a really strong tea concentrate and then move on to the next steps. So we're going to bring the water to a boil. This is incredibly fun to watch. I recommend you go and do something else while your water is coming to a boil. Maybe watch through this video a few times, or you can like and subscribe. That's always a good time too. Nice time killer. And once the water has been brought to a rolling boil, you can turn off the heat, and you're going to add 10 bags of black tea into the water. This does not have to be anything fancy. It's mainly creating a medium for your Scoby to grow and thrive in, to get that nice kombucha flavor that you're looking for. So put 10 bags of tea into the water, let it steep for at least 10 minutes. You can go as long as you'd like at this step. But if you let the water get too cool, you're going to have to bring it up to heat again in order to make the sugar dissolve in the next step. So 10 minutes I found to be just enough time. Then you're going to take the tea bags out of the water, and congratulations, you've just made tea. It's a pretty huge accomplishment. If you've never cooked anything before, you're on to a good start at this point. So just be careful while you're taking the black tea out of the stock pot, because you do not want to rupture one of the bags. If you do, you're going to make a big mess, and it's going to create all sorts of chaos in the next step. So just be a little bit delicate while removing the tea, and make sure that your water is going to be nice and hot enough to dissolve the sugar for this next step. And as long as that's the case, you're going to be good to go. So the next thing we're going to do is going to take our white sugar, and we're going to be adding 2 cups of sugar into this mixture. Like I said, you can use other sweeteners, but you cannot use honey for this step. It will disrupt the process and won't turn out the way you want it to. So just add 2 cups of sugar to this tea concentrate, this black tea concentrate, and dissolve the sugar into the tea by stirring it thoroughly. As soon as it's nice and dissolved, you're going to be able to move on to the next step. And we're honestly at this point so close to being done with making the kombucha. So honestly, you're just making sweet tea. That's it. So we've got that in there. We're going to give it a good old stir. Make sure everything's good and dissolved, and then once that's set to go, you're going to move on to the next step. Once again, if you haven't turned off your oven, your stovetop yet, please make sure to turn it off. You don't want to cause any damage or forget to do that. So the heat should be off, the water should be hot, the sugar should be dissolving, and your tea should be ready to go just like that. So at this point we have sweet tea, and that's about it. Remember that water that we left in our original container? We're going to pour the rest of that into this. This is going to bring our black tea to a rapid cool, and we're going to pour the other half of the liquid into our stock pot. So we had 25% black tea mixture with sugar. We added 75% more water, and that should bring it to a nice room temperature. Should be slightly warm to the touch, but not hot. At this point, you're going to be transferring the black tea into your primary fermentation vessel or vessels. We use 2, mainly because it helps us to put it into different small spaces. If you have one giant fermentation vessel, then it's a little bit harder to store at some points, and if there does happen to be some sort of contamination, then your entire batch is ruined. Whereas if you have 2 vessels, then if one batch doesn't turn out quite right, you can still likely have a successful second batch. So if you have an auto siphon, you can use that at this point, or you can siphon the water into the containers. That's a little bit more complicated. If all you have is a measuring cup or a stainless steel bowl, then just use that to transfer the water into the other containers. So use what you have on hand. And if you get to the point where you start making kombucha more often, then start worrying about getting special items to help the process go smoother for you. So we're just going to be using a stainless steel bowl, trying to be careful as we transfer this sugary tea into the containers. This can be pretty nasty to clean up because it is just mainly hot sugar water or warm sugar water, so be a little bit delicate. All you're going to do is equally distribute the contents into your primary fermentation containers, and then we're going to be ready for the next step before too long, which will be putting the kombucha, putting the Scoby into each container. As I said, you need to make sure that your tea is at a room temperature before this. So if it's just feeling too hot, then hold off on putting your Scoby into the containers until it's ready to go. The size of the Scoby really isn't that important. It can be the size of a lid, or it can be the size of a quarter. As long as it's a healthy, active Scoby, it's going to work. So once you put your Scoby into the primary fermentation, put a breathable cloth on top of it with a rubber band. I just use paper towels and it works great. You don't need to get too fancy. And then you're going to put this somewhere that is dark and temperate for 1 week up to 2 weeks is totally fine. You can see at this point the liquid has turned somewhat a little bit foggy, and you'll notice that there's more growth of the Scoby itself filling up the top of the bottle. Then we simply get on to the bottling stage. This is going to do a couple of things. It's going to balance out the tartness of your kombucha, and it's also going to carbonate your beverage to give it that nice fizzy feeling that people enjoy. So what I like to do is do 1 tablespoon of white sugar per 750 milliliter bottle. I found that works pretty good. You can do a little bit more if you want. You're really just going to have to figure out kind of a balance between the fermentation time and the flavor profile that you like. Now, because I use 2 different primary fermentation vessels, I'm going to take a little bit of kombucha from each of these vessels, doing equal parts to make sure that my flavor profile is consistent and my sugar contents are also consistent. This allows me to have pretty even taste between bottles, and it helps me to calculate the bottle time. Another helpful hint for this is to have 1 bottle plastic to begin with. A soda stream bottle works great, or you can just get a old soda bottle, and you can allow that to ferment alongside the glass bottles, but you can feel the amount of carbonation because the plastic will get nice and stiff, and that will help you know when your kombucha is ready. Once you figure that out, then you can just switch to all glass if you'd like, and there's nothing that you really need to worry about. You should have pretty consistent fermentation times as long as the temperature and the sugar contents remain the same. So here I am just continuing to do some bottling. Nothing special about this. I'm simply using a measuring cup, doing 1 pour, 1 cup from each container. It's a little bit of a tedious process, I know, but I think that the overall result of having consistency is worth it. If you do have a larger vessel to use for bottling, or you simply have more space so that you can do your primary fermentation in 1 bottle, then that's totally ideal. But you use what you have and do what you can with what you've got, and that's what I'm doing. So once we have everything kind of good and mixed up, I'm gonna be able to put that to the side. And now I'm removing the Scobies from the primary fermentation vessels. You can see how much there is. These have actually grown. Every time that you make a batch of kombucha, you're going to grow a new Scoby in your fermentation tank. So you're going to want to eventually have a little hotel to put your Scobies in, feed it with a little bit of sugar, put it again in a warm, dark place, and just have it untouched until you want to use it again. You can see the nice bubbles of the kombucha, showing that there's a healthy fermentation process taking place. Just wanted to demonstrate what that will look like as you're bottling. Once you start working on your kombucha, you're going to find the flavor that you like, you're going to find blends that you like, and at the bottling stage is really where you're going to add any sort of essential oils or ginger or lemon juice or anything that you want. So here I am, just gonna combine my 2 vessels together to make the bottling process a little bit easier down the road. Mix the flavors together, like I said. So if you've fermented in 2 vessels, feel free to do likewise. It just makes the process a little bit more smooth and easy. So I'm just going to finish bottling everything up, and we're going to be set to go. These will be ready in about 1 week, give or take, and I'll be able to enjoy my very own homemade kombucha, and I hope that you will as well. So if you've enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please like and subscribe. I'm going to keep on making more videos as I have time. And until then, cheers. Hope you find yourself well.